What if the most sacred word in the Bible is the one you have never been allowed to say? What if the God who revealed himself by name was quietly renamed by history? For centuries, believers have prayed to God, to Lord, unaware that behind these titles once stood a name spoken with fire, written with trembling hands, and guarded as covenant itself. A name spoken by prophets, a name revealed from a burning bush, a name written thousands of times in the earliest scriptures, and almost nowhere in the Bibles we read today. This was not an accident. It was not a mistranslation. It was a decision made quietly, passed down carefully, and inherited without question. While empires debated theology and rewrote scripture in their own image, one ancient nation never agreed to forget. High in the mountains of Ethiopia, the name survived, untouched, unedited, unafraid. This is not a story about religion. It is a story about memory, and the name history hoped you would never notice.
Welcome to Origin Paradox. What if the most powerful change ever made to the Bible wasn't a verse, wasn't a missing book, but a name? What if the God you have prayed to your entire life introduced himself clearly, personally, unmistakably, and history quietly chose not to repeat it? In the earliest layers of Scripture, God does not remain distant. He does not hide behind titles or abstractions. He speaks. From fire, from storm, from silence itself, he reveals a name, 4 letters etched into eternity, a name written more than 6,000 times by human hands that trembled with fear and devotion. Not God, not Lord, a name. This was not metaphor. This was introduction. In the ancient world, names were not labels, they were identity. To know a name was to know who stood before you and who walked with you. The people of Israel guarded that name as covenant, as presence, as breath itself. And yet, somewhere along the long road of history, that name began to fade. The first change came quietly. When Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek, scribes faced a dilemma. The sacred name was foreign, unpronounceable, even dangerous to a world ruled by philosophy and empire. So they chose a substitute, Kyrios, Lord, a title, safer, smoother, easier to speak. No erasure, just replacement. Then Rome inherited the text. Jerome's Latin translation followed the same path. Dominus, Lord again. What began as caution hardened into tradition. A name replaced by a role. Relationship replaced by hierarchy. What was once personal became distant. What was once known became unnamed. Centuries later, when the English Bible was formed, the decision was already sealed. The translators printed Lord in capital letters, an elegant disguise for something no longer present. Millions would read the Bible from cover to cover, never realizing that behind the word Lord stood a name older than kings, older than nations, older than language itself. The loss did not feel violent. That is why it worked. No protests, no warnings, just silence. Generation after generation prayed to God, never knowing the scriptures once invited them to call someone by name. A relationship quietly softened into abstraction, a covenant slowly blurred into religion. This was not a mistake, it was a decision. And to understand why the name was hidden, we must go to the one place where it never vanished. Because while the Western world forgot the name, Ethiopia remembered. While the Western world debated doctrine in marble halls, while empires rose, translated, standardized, and ruled, another story continued far from Rome, far from Canterbury, far from the reach of imperial hands, a story not of change, but of memory. High in the mountains of East Africa, Ethiopia guarded something the world let slip away. Ethiopia was never conquered by Rome. Its faith did not kneel before European councils. Its scriptures were not filtered through imperial approval. Protected by geography, by lineage, by an unbroken sense of identity, Ethiopian Christianity grew in its own soil. While the Western world debated doctrine in marble halls, while empires rose, translated, standardized, and ruled, another story continued far from Rome, far from Canterbury, far from the reach of imperial hands, a story not of change, but of memory. High in the mountains of East Africa, Ethiopia guarded something the world let slip away. Ethiopia was never conquered by Rome. Its faith did not kneel before European councils. Its scriptures were not filtered through imperial approval. Protected by geography, by lineage, by an unbroken sense of identity, Ethiopian Christianity grew in its own soil, rooted, ancient, and fiercely faithful to what it received. By the 5th and 6th centuries, Ethiopian scribes were copying texts in the sacred language of Ge'ez, not revising, not correcting, preserving. They wrote the names of God with the same gravity their ancestors had known, names the Western world would later fear, soften, or replace. For Ethiopia, the divine name was not dangerous, it was inheritance. Their Bible did not shrink, it expanded. Books the West would discard survived intact. Enoch walked freely through their pages. Jubilees shaped their understanding of time and covenant. The ascension of Isaiah carried visions older than empire. These were not lost texts rediscovered later. They were never lost at all. In Ethiopian worship, the name was not locked away behind superstition. It lived in prayer, in chant, in memory. Titles were used with respect, but the sacred identity was never erased, never overwritten. To alter the name would have been unthinkable, not translation, but betrayal. Ethiopia did not see itself as adopting a foreign faith. It believed it was remembering its own, a continuation of covenant, not an imitation of Europe. Their priests did not argue for authority. They assumed responsibility, the responsibility of guardianship. When European missionaries finally arrived carrying Latin and English Bibles, expecting obedience, they met resistance, not rebellion, refusal. Ethiopia did not surrender its canon, did not revise its vocabulary, did not accept that God needed renaming for the sake of empire. To them, the Western Bible was younger, edited, filtered, incomplete. Ethiopia stands as a living archive, not frozen in time, but faithful across time, a witness that Scripture can survive untouched, a reminder that while the world forgot the name, it was never truly lost. It was waiting, spoken softly, guarded fiercely, remembered fully.
If a name carries identity, then forgetting a name carries consequences. This is not theology in abstraction. It is the shape of faith itself. Because when the name was replaced, something essential shifted. Not belief in God, but closeness to Him.
Modern scholars are now confirming what Ethiopian scribes never forgot. God and Lord are titles, not names. They describe position, not presence, role, not identity. In the ancient world, every nation had gods, but only Israel's God stepped forward and named himself. In the Hebrew scriptures, the names are layered, deliberate, alive. Each one reveals a dimension of divine character, not interchangeable, not poetic variations, revelations. When these names were flattened into a single title, the portrait lost its depth. The God who walked, spoke, and bound himself in covenant became an idea to be believed in, not a presence to be known. This shift was not accidental. It happened when Scripture collided with empire. Rome ruled through hierarchy, titles, and centralized authority. A God with a personal name, a name invoked above all earthly power, was a threat. A named God could not be absorbed into imperial order, so the name faded and titles remained. What began as reverence turned into fear. What began as caution became silence. The name was deemed too holy to speak, then too holy to write, and in trying to protect it, the Western world lost it. Generations inherited faith without familiarity, worship without intimacy, belief without recognition. Ethiopia stands as the counterpoint, a living reminder that faith does not require erasure to survive, that reverence does not demand forgetting. While empires filtered scripture through politics and power, Ethiopian faith preserved memory through continuity. No councils, no revisions, just guardianship. This is why Ethiopia matters, not because it is mysterious, not because it is distant, but because it reveals what faith looks like when the chain of memory remains unbroken. It shows us that the divine name was never meant to vanish. It was meant to be carried. And now the question moves from history to you. If the name reveals identity, what happens when it is remembered again? What changes when prayer becomes personal, when faith shifts from addressing a title to recognizing a presence? The name was never lost, it was forgotten, hidden beneath centuries of translation, tradition, and empire, waiting in manuscripts, waiting in ancient prayers, waiting in the memory of a people who refused to let covenant be rewritten. And perhaps now, it waits in you.